Hi there guys, before I go any further, let me just say right up front that Sonicake have sent me this. I haven't been paid to do the video, but I do get to keep it or sell it or do whatever I want to do with it, so just bear that in mind. There's going to be a 12-minute section in the middle of this video that is incredibly boring to anyone that isn't actually considering buying this. I feel like it's useful information where I'm going to go over the limitations of the device, but if you're just here for pure entertainment value, you'll fall asleep on a keyboard, so I would recommend skipping that section. So before that, I'm just going to outline a couple of the things that I thought were outstanding features of it, including, I've written them down here in case I forget everything, third-party IR support. So I used third-party IRs for the intro jam, and I will do again for the isolated examples that you can skip to at the end of this video. The amp selections were great. They didn't just give you Marshall, Vox, and Fender as a lot of the these modeling things do. They've given you some actually interesting choices that would be good for a starting point for a variety of styles. So for you metal guys out there, you know, I'm not a metal person, I can't play that stuff, so I'm not going to insult you by trying, but just know that they've given you things like Diesel, Bogner, I think there was maybe an Engel in there, so some good starting points for heavier tones. They've also given you things like Matchless, and I believe there was a Dr. Z amp, don't quote me on these things. Basically just a broad selection of amps that would be good starting points. There is a global EQ, it's very powerful, and as you'll see in the next section, it's actually a really good workaround for one of the limitations of the device. I love the fact that it's got a looper in it. I can see that you could use it live. I think getting back out of the looper takes too long, so you hit two of the foot switches at the same time to get into the looper, but you have to long press, and it's quite a long press, to get back out of it. It's got MIDI clock. It's capable of receiving and sending MIDI clock. A friend of mine, it was the first thing he asked. I've never used MIDI for a guitar in my life, but it was the first thing he asked, so I thought I'd just include that here. The size of the tuner is enormous. It's like a tuner for the visually impaired. Really great and nice and accurate as well. It's not skittish. Some of them are a little skittish. And I really like the fast access buttons on the face of the unit. So it's a node-based system similar to a HX Stomp, or certainly that's the kind of aesthetic they're going for, although there are a couple of limitations that you wouldn't have with a HX Stomp, which I will get into in this next section. But the fast access buttons is one of the things that I really liked, because with multi-effects, that's my big problem with multi-effects as a concept, is that editing something on the fly takes a bit of time because you end up menu diving. But with this, you have buttons that will take you straight to the parameters of each of the blocks, with one caveat, which I will highlight in this next section. You can see that it's pretty much a node-based system, very similar to a HX Stomp. You can think of this as being a HX Stomp Lite. So the main screen, when you're in what you call preset mode, which is what we're in right now, if I just exit this, this is your main screen. This is what you'll see when you're using the presets. And these two foot switches will allow you to page through the presets you've got. So we've got Bend's Dumble, Bend's Clean, and I'll just scroll back to the Marshall one because there's quite a bit happening with this one. Now, unlike a HX Stomp, you also have these fast access buttons along the bottom here, and they're named in yellow writing on the device itself. And if you press any of them, it will give you fast access to that node. So if I hit effects 1, it'll take me straight to effects 1, and then these 3 controls will allow you to control the parameters along the bottom of the screen here. So if I just exit this, the way that you would do this on something like a HX Stomp, you would hit the parameter knob once, and then you could scroll to whichever node you wanted to edit. Let's go to the noise reduction one, and you could press it again. So that would be a lot longer-winded way of doing it in a live environment, whereas here you could just simply find the noise reduction switch, hit it, and you'd be straight into it. However, bear with me because I'm just going to quickly do something here. In a live environment, you might be confronted with this. Okay, so which of those buttons along the bottom pertain to any one of the effects? Bear in mind that they are fixed. So what I mean by that is the names under here do not change. So they don't correspond to the positions along here. They are always in that sequence. Now they do go in the sequence of a pedal board. You would start with your boosts and you'd have your delays toward the end. But I would think that things like noise reduction, cab, and EQ would be very difficult to remember, especially because those things might actually change position in your chain. So these are very good in decent lighting conditions, but in a gig situation, they may not be usable. Just something to bear in mind. So like I said, it's a node-based system very similar to a HX Stomp. And you can shift each of the nodes along using this button right here. You can see it says position. I can just move this along, and you can see that this blue node here is moving along my signal path. So that's pretty neat. So you can do that, but what you can't do is you cannot split the signal in any way. So you can't have dual amp processing, dual IRs, which might be a limitation that some of you guys will think is a deal breaker. For me, I found I could get some pretty decent sounds just with the simple signal path. Another thing that is a hell of a limitation, and bear this in mind because this is going to come back to bite us in the ass in a little bit, is that you cannot make custom nodes. So what I mean by this is, in this patch, I don't have a modulation on it. I just have a delay and a couple of different drives and an EQ. I can't sacrifice my modulation and say, well, I'm going to get rid of that and have 2 delays. It just doesn't allow you to do it. So you're basically stuck with these nodes, and it's up to you whether they're on or off and what you put into those nodes. By the way, turning it on and off is very simple. You can use these buttons here. So you can see right now the cursor or the square is around effects 1. If I was to go to effects 2 and then hit it again, you can see that that's now no longer illuminated, and neither is this light here. So by hitting it again, it's now on. So this is a really fast way of turning the nodes on and off. So what I've got in effects 1, if I just scroll over to that and hit the parameter knob, you can see that I've got the super overdrive, and using the parameter knob again, we can scroll through all of the choices. Now effects 1 and effects 2, and bear in mind what I just said about not being able to create custom nodes, effects 1 and effects 2 are only for things like drives, boosts, octaves, anything you would have at the start of the chain. What you can't put in it are modulations or delays. What that means is, in every patch, as in this whole thing, you've only got 1 delay block. So if you were in stomp mode, which is how I would personally use it, let me just scroll a second. Let me just scroll to the next patch and then back to here, because I don't want to save any of the things I've done. If you hold the right hand foot switch down, it'll then go into this goes into stomp mode. So now you can assign whatever you want to all three of these switches. So what I've got is all of my drive section assigned to the first switch. I don't believe I've got anything at all assigned to the middle, and then delay assigned to the last one. So you saw the delay went off there and off there. So when I turn it on, and you can choose whether blue is on or red is on. I just have it as blue is on because I prefer blue LEDs. On this one, I've got multiple things happening. So I turn that on and off. You can see loads of different things went off. So I have both of my effects 1, effects 2, and noise reduction, and I think, what else did I have there? Just those, actually. I've left the EQ on the whole time. So you can assign anything you want to it. The other thing I've got on here, and this is a really neat feature, I've got my delay volume assigned to the expression pedal, not my overall volume. So you can decide whether you want this to be a wah or a volume or whatever. You can assign any parameter you want. Only one though. You can't assign multiple parameters to this. There is also a secondary expression out if that's useful to you, which it will be when I explain this limitation. If I wanted to set this up how I would normally have it set up, I would have my drives assigned to this. I would have a short delay set to this and a long delay set to this, because that's pretty much what I use. I use one sound and two different delay sounds, or two different delay times. It's actually the same delay. I can't do that because I've only got one delay block, and I can't assign delay to either effects 1 or effects 2. So the only way that you could facilitate that in a live gig would be to go into preset mode. You hold this down. So we're now back into preset mode here, which means I can scroll left and right with these things, and I would basically duplicate the entire patch except with a different delay length. And so I duplicate the entire patch and put Ben's Marshall slap echo and then Ben's Marshall long echo next to each other. The problem with that is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different blocks here that have EQs. And I'm going to tell you about the EQ in just a second, because that's got some quirks as well. It's very good, it's very powerful, but it's got a couple of quirks. But I've got 5 different blocks that might have EQ. So in a live environment, the only way to have different delays on the same sound is to duplicate that sound and have only the delay change. When you scroll between the two, it will be a slap echo here and then a long echo here. You'd have to then edit all 5 blocks if you wanted to make an EQ change. So the only thing you want to change is the delay, which means every time you've got another delay, you might have 5 different delays. You might use the filter sweep echoes and all that kind of stuff. I would basically have to make the same alterations and save them in all of the patches that have my different delays but the same sound. You'd also be tap dancing between these two a lot if you had, say, 3 different delays on your dirty and 3 different delays on your clean. You might end up having to press that 6 times to scoot back and forth. So it is a bit of an issue for me, although, you know, you do have 66 lots of A, B, and C, so you've got plenty of places to store these things, but I just can't imagine paging through that many. You can hold it down, but you're going to have to do a lot of tap dancing in order to get your different delay sounds, is my only big beef with it. Now, there is a bit of a workaround for the EQ in that you have globals, and the globals has an EQ, and I can just scroll across to it. It says global EQ right here. And this comes up like a regular looking graphic. And if you hit the parameter knob again, you can see these things along the bottom allow you to create some kind of an EQ curve. And whatever you do here will apply to every single patch. So every bank, every letter designation within it will be affected by the global EQ. So this is really cool if maybe the venue is very bassy and you need to just adjust the bass, roll it off or something like that. You can do it here. You could do it from your PA's desk if you wanted, of course, and that's probably how I would do it rather than mess around with this kind of thing. But if you didn't have control, maybe you're working with an engineer and you just want to affect your own sound, you could do it using this. So that's a neat little workaround. Let's get into the delays a second. So the delays are here. There's a lot of choice. You've got things like ping pong, sweep echoes. I was really pleased to see that they've put the Line 6 filter sweep echo in here, or something very similar to. That's a really nice color to have. So the other thing I wanted to show you, which was a slight limitation, was the EQ block itself. Now, of course, you have the global EQ, but if you want to do EQ just one patch, which is more likely, so you want to EQ your drive sound different to your clean sound, for example, you have these. And what these are preset, I can't really call them nodes because that'll get a bit confusing. Preset parameters, we'll call them. So I'm on guitar 2. Now you'll notice I've got 500 Hertz and 100 Hertz. If I was to use the parameter node to scroll to guitar EQ1, because you can run bass through it and whatever else you want to use it for. But if I scroll to 1 and then click that, You'll notice it's now changed to 125 Hertz and 400 Hertz. There are more. You can click this again and it goes to 1.6 4K. And then if I go back to my, hold a second, made a mistake there. If I go back to EQ2, so I've got 100 Hertz, 500, 1K, and if I hit this again, we're now on 3K and 6K up here. Now, let's say, for example, you wanted to adjust 500 Hertz, which is that low-mid dumble push, and 125 Hertz, because 125 Hertz is usually the boom in any kind of room. So, you know, if somebody's really welling up with low end, it's usually 125 Hertz is the problem. You can't do that. You have to choose guitar 1 or guitar 2. You can't control 500 Hertz and then also use guitar 1 and control 125 Hertz. You have to choose which one you want, which is the problem area. It's a very powerful EQ, but the fact that you can't specify like you can in the globals and simply pick your frequency. So in the global EQ, for example, you would be able to, let's just scroll across to here. If I was to ramp this up so that you've got this EQ here, I could use the frequency band for frequency band 1, and I could just move that along to anywhere I wanted to see it, and then maybe I could cut it out, and then I can shape what the EQ is, very wide or very narrow band, whatever I want to do with it. So this is very, very controllable, whereas the EQs for the patch selection, these EQs are limited to what they have on the screen when you start. Slight limitation, but it is very powerful, and I've got some pretty decent sounds from it. The reverbs are good. There's a couple of modulated verbs, sky, that kind of thing, and some basic halls. I would have liked a few more of the modulated ones, but pretty good, especially for the price point. So I think you can see it's fairly comprehensive, but there are a couple of things in here that might be problematic for using it in a live environment, namely the fact that you can't make your own effect node. So when you're looking at in this screen right here, because you can't make your own nodes and create them as custom, that could be problematic. Now you can put things in the effects loop, and you can move the effects loop the same as you can move the nodes. You can move it any way you want. So you could either use it for cable method, or you could run a delay in a loop and then have in, for example, in stomp mode, you could assign the loop to be this middle button here, and that could be one of your delays, and then one delay could be the internal delay. So there are workarounds. Another thing you could do is, like I said, I've got my expression pedal controlling the delay volume. Well, the second expression pedal could control the delay time, and you can set the maximum and minimum amounts on the expression. So I've got it so that when it's fully down, toe down position, it's only about 30% of something of the volume, because any more than that is just crazy. And in the lowest position, it's about 10 or something, which is where I would normally have it. So that the sweep is a little bit more subtle. But you could do the same thing with your second expression pedal. So you could set your full heel down position as being your short echo, and your full toe down position as being your long echo, and then control the volume of it with the second expression pedal. So there are multiple workarounds, and it's incredible what they've given you. So overall, I really like this device. I have actually considered switching to it for my my backing track gigs. There's a couple of the things about it that I think would be really practical for that over the system that I've got right now. That being said, I've got an electricity bill needs paying, and this will cover it. So maybe I don't keep it, I don't know. But I would like to put my money where my mouth is and actually record some live footage to show you that you could use it on a gig. I will say, and this is a little beef I have with a lot of these multi-effects things, the initial patches that you get on startup were pretty lame. You know, I don't know why they don't just go to town on the first 5 patches and say, this is a really good rock sound, a really great blues sound, jazz, whatever. Just give you some really strong patches. Now, I understand that a lot of the starting points are there to illustrate the fact that you can do crazy things with a delay or whatever. It shows you the features, but I think that they should start out stronger in all of these things, and the presets should just be better from the get-go. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you didn't fall asleep on the keyboard. There's not too much drool to clean off it. And I'll see you in the next one. Later.